what I love about the show is it, it highlights the, raw and vulnerable parts of motherhood, which I love, but it really does though come back to the love and compassion that unites us all. And so I was wanting to get your thoughts on, what do you think are the great perspectives and themes about motherhood that you think really come out in this show that attracted you to the role?
I think that, and again, it's sort of, I feel like I might be speaking out of my own jurisdiction because I'm not yet a mother, but I can imagine, and from the mothers that I know, that it is the most unparalleled relationship that you could possibly ever have. The love and the strength and the bond that you have with your child is unlike anything that you would ever experience outside of motherhood. And I think that that's why so many great stories are told about motherhood in general, and about parenthood and about family, because it is the most exceptionally rare of relationships. And I think what is so interesting about Grace in particular is that she is an expert in bringing babies into the world, and she's kind of every mother's best friend in the delivery room. And yet the one thing that she's so skilled at and adept at in her professional life, she hasn't quite managed to conquer successfully in her personal life, and that's motherhood. And I think that's the one thing that she dearly would love to be able to have done successfully.
No, I totally agree. And almost building off of that, on almost the flip side, what I love so much about this show is while it does highlight those really strong motherly themes that you talked about, it also has these amazing themes of, friendship, romance, adulthood that feel very accessible and relatable to all audiences. So wanted to also kind of get your perspectives on that, of what do you feel makes the story of Amazing Grace so captivating outside of audiences that might just be in that mom community?
Well, I think at the heart of a show like Amazing Grace, like so many amazing shows, it's about a dysfunctional family, and family can look so different for so many different people. And for Grace, her dysfunctional family is not just her mother and her adopted daughter. It's her colleagues, it's her best friend, it's her work life, it's everybody within the world of St. Bridget's. So she has this kind of immediate dysfunctional family, and then this extended dysfunctional family beyond her blood relations. And I think that that's what makes interesting drama, no matter what the show is about. I think that some of the best shows in the world are about lovable dysfunctional families. Look at The Sopranos or Breaking Bad or 6 Feet Under. So many amazing shows are about families that just can't quite get their stuff together.
Totally. No, I totally agree. And I think that's just what makes the show so captivating, and you get so invested in the characters and their stories and journeys and want to learn more. So I totally agree. And what I also love so much about the show, obviously, is it does provide a very modern lens to the long withstanding practice of midwifery and stuff. And so I was curious, what were the insights and perspectives that you learned about midwives and their role in society when you were preparing for this role?
Wow. Well, I mean, I guess the first thing that I learned straight off the back was that I completely underestimated the role of midwives in the delivery of the delivery of babies. I mean, obviously I knew that they were a crucial part of the process, but I think, like so many people, I underestimated just how vital and central their role is. I think I had a very narrow view of childbirth. I think I thought that it was doctors and nurses that basically took care of it, but really it's the midwives' starring role, and that is what they are so brilliantly prepared for. And a midwife is not just a medical professional; they're also a counselor, an emotional coach, so much more, a friend, a confidant. And every single woman, I can guarantee you, every single woman who's given birth will remember her midwife and remember the remember the bond that they had, because if you can have a good experience with a midwife, then you will probably have a good experience in birth. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the depths of what they have to do to be good and successful at their job, it's limitless. Not only is it physically grueling, it's taxing, there are really long hours, it's shift work on that very basic level. It's a really difficult job. But not only that, you are dealing with human beings at their most vulnerable, at kind of the most fragile point of their lives, because the day that women give birth, it's either going to be the best day of their lives, or unfortunately for some, the worst day of their lives. And the midwife is in charge of orchestrating that day, and they're in control of not only delivering a healthy baby into the world, but making sure that the birthing mother is okay and that the family is okay. It's really an exceptionally complex and convoluted job, and every midwife I've ever met in real life is just does it with such ease and such grace. And they don't make it seem like hard work. But even just myself pretending to be a midwife, it was hard work. So I can't imagine what actually, the real thing must be like. But I have a huge amount of respect for them.
Oh, I completely agree. And you feel that in the show 100%. Was curious as well, Kate, how were you able to engage with some of the local midwife communities when you were working on this project, or how were you able to lean into the expertise of this phenomenal community of women?
Well, we were incredibly lucky on the set of Amazing Grace, because despite the fact that we were filming in the middle of a global pandemic, and unfortunately access to hospitals, to birthing suites, to birthing centres, and to midwives, there was absolutely no access whatsoever. We couldn't gain entry into that world for very obvious and understandable reasons. But fortunately for us, on staff of the show was our resident midwife, Jess, she was our guide the entire way. And not only was she guiding the writing staff, the directing staff, and the producers, she had a huge hand, obviously, in instructing us actors, because obviously we had to make that world look believable. And she was extraordinary. And for me, not truly understanding the world of midwifery until I did this show, she was the perfect example of what I wanted my midwife, Grace, to look like. She was graceful. She was cool and calm under pressure. She had a great sense of humor. She was a passionate feminist, an advocate of women and their rights, and just exactly the kind of person you want in the room when you are going through your most painful and vulnerable and emotional day.
Oh, I can totally imagine. And just the final question on kind of the midwife topic, what I found interesting is, so apparently last year, the World Health Organization actually declared 2020 the International Year of the Midwife. So it really goes to show that midwives are being more and more recognized and appreciated on a world stage. So kind of building off of what you already said, but what is it about the modern portrayal of midwives in Amazing Grace you felt was a really important story to tell kind of in this day and age?
I think that what separates midwives from, say, other health professionals or nurses, for example, and this is a generalization and it's just my opinion, of course, but I feel like, a nurse or a doctor, as long as you get the job done, as long as you're a professional, and do your job the way it's supposed to, then, you can say that you've had a successful day at the office. But a midwife, I think, to be successful in that profession, you have to have such personable skills. You have to have such compassion, such empathy, because a woman going in to give birth, a woman in labor, is such a different case to someone who's going in to have their appendix out. There's such emotion and such gravity attached to childbirth, and again, like I said, it's dealing with men and women on their most vulnerable and potentially the most exciting day of their lives, potentially the most devastating, and to kind of be the arbiter of that level of emotion must be a huge responsibility. And I can understand how midwives must just be so exhausted emotionally and physically after their day's work, after their careers. It's such a huge thing that they're taking on. So I can understand why it's a profession, and that it's a story that we continue to see on our screens year after year, because it's instant drama, really, bringing life into the world. It's the recipe for a successful drama, I think. And that's why I think a show like Amazing Grace is always going to be enjoyable to watch and consumable on a global level, because there is just something undeniably watchable and interesting about babies coming into the world. I mean, it's so undeniably emotional.
Wow. You almost perfectly answered my final question, but I'll quickly just, close, because I wanted to just, get your final perspectives, Kate, because as you already mentioned as well, there's such universal themes that I think will resonate with so many different audiences with this show. But obviously during COVID, so many North American audiences were gravitating towards more international content because of its universal appeal. And so just wanted to get your final thoughts on, what is it about Amazing Grace that you think our Canadian audiences will be excited about to watch, and what is it about the show that you think will captivate an audience in Australia, Canada, or beyond?
Well, I think a show like Amazing Grace, it's completely human. I mean, both emotionally, but also completely literally. It's about women's bodies and what they are capable of doing, and the human beings that are brought into the world, the human bodies that are pushing these new bodies into the world, and the midwives, the bodies that are actually, the gatekeepers to this new life. And I think that there's always something so welcome and watchable about a show that's just about humanity on a really kind of simple and raw level. I mean, there's always going to be a place on our screens for a show like, Game of Thrones, or something fantastical, fantasy based. But again, there's always, contrary to that, there's always going to be a place for just bare bones, raw humanity. And I think that that's what Amazing Grace delivers.